So we're here for Comic Book Shopping, our first ever international episode, and I'm here with Mysterio himself, Jake Gyllenhaal.
What's going on? It's just the beginning of the absurd things I've done in my career. We can fly out of this scene. Cosmic energy flavor.
Cosmic energy flavor.
Love it.
So we're here at Orbital Comics. We are very far from home, and we're here to promote Spider-Man Far From Home. Are you ready to do some comic book shopping?
Totally.
Let's get some comics.
All right.
So these big blockbusters, a huge part of it has to be like transcending the absurdity of when you're on set and there's so much green screen, there's just so much. What brought you to the heart and truth of wearing a fishbowl in your head?
It's just the beginning of the absurd things I've done in my career. I was not intimidated by it at all, but I never actually wore an actual fishbowl. The entire fishbowl is CGI.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So the Instagram moment was the only.
That was my preparatory fishbowl, and I walked around trying to see if I could see through. I would fill it with smoke and see if I could see through it. After, when I finally learned how to fly, what I did was I then started in with a fishbowl. It wasn't the opposite order. I realized it was probably better to learn to fly first.
Yeah.
I've always been able to shoot lasers out of my hands. Then I did the fishbowl.
Inspired.
Yeah.
I like this direction.
If you want to talk about it, I don't want to waste your time.
I know. I'm
it's just,
fully
I hate
invested.
talking about
I'm
an
in.
actor's process. It's so annoying, but you know, it's like
starting here and then there and then. So since you're real life friends with Deadpool and Wolverine,
yes.
How did you guys all celebrate you being inducted into the club officially?
I'm friends with Wolverine, Deadpool, not so much anymore.
Okay, got it.
I should just be clear about that.
I appreciate the
Yeah,
honesty.
he has a sort of way with words that just doesn't really sit well with
Caustic.
me. You know what I mean? Yeah.
That Canadian.
Yeah.
Tricky.
That's not about Canada. Go Canada. Yeah, Raptors. But I just they were both excited. They threw me a party. It was the three of us, all in our costumes. We get together often. It's great. It's really nice to hang out with the two of them.
Every comic you read,
Great.
just like you picture, this is all how it goes. All right, let's actually show you some comics, man.
Okay, cool.
This is a run where J. Michael Straczynski introduces a more adult Peter Parker, and he's a teacher instead of a student. And the Spider-Verse movie that just came out, it all kind of starts here. There's a character introduced that introduces like a spider totem, which evolves into the Spider-Verse. It's a good jumping on point, but this is 2001. So they've been laying those seeds for that long for the Spider-Verse to exist. And I know you're a New Yorker. As an East Coast kid, a really important moment for me was 9/11 happened during the printing of this book, and they halted all production, and they did a special issue that only Spider-Man really ran with, and you actually have the heroes dealing with the ramifications and helping out the first responders.
Oh, wow.
The villains put down their alliances and they team up and they fix New York.
That's incredible.
And I thought it was a really special take. And also in this, Aunt May finds out that he's Spider-Man.
Oh, wow.
So there's a lot in this one volume.
And I was 46 in 2001, so
I mean, it's been a run.
I was young then.
I mean,
yeah.
This is a one-off. This is in the middle of this giant crossover called War of Realms. Imagine if Game of Thrones invaded Marvel. And you see how Spider-Man would handle it, and not well, because he's Spider-Man. He's a ground game guy. So it involves him like talking to a Pegasus wearing a life-altering helmet. It involves like the highest of stakes.
Whoa.
It's about as crazy as it gets. And then Kraven's Last Hunt is one of those books that's so iconic and so important. It shows the darker side of Spider-Man. So he's actually buried alive here. And then Kraven takes up his mantle by wearing the suit and he starts beating the crap out of all the villains. So Spider-Man's name is like completely tarnished. As much light there is in Spider-Man, you have to see the darkness to really get the character. That's the responsibility versus power aspect. So Tom Holland basically plays Ultimate Spider-Man. This is the first three, which kind of gives us the MCU Sony flavor of Spidey. Boom. And then 13, I think, is one of the best single issues of Spider-Man of all time, and he never puts on the suit. It's all love, it's all Spidey, and it's quippy, it's fast, it's crazy.
Amazing.
Let's
Wow.
teach you more about comics. You ready for it's only the beginning, I'm so sorry.
I've always loved homework.
Here's a literal weight of books. Talked about roles impacting your actual molecular structure before, like the neon socks with Southpaw, how you realized like one day you're like, wait, I'm just Billy Hope. Like, when did this happen?
Yeah.
How did Mysterio do that for you? What did you find in your molecular structure?
The suit. It was just the suit from the beginning. The design of the suit it was a couple different stages. You know, we tried it on different ways. They would start design it and then change it. When I first put on the whole suit, like the first day, you know, that happens usually, like with almost every character you play. I think Phil Hoffman would joke one time about how like sometimes you're just on your way to set, you don't know half of what you're doing and you just gotta make a choice.
Yeah.
And there are sometimes those feelings. When I put on that suit, I was like, here he is.
Yeah,
You know?
and it's like a full Ramita, like it's actually the screen accurate suit.
Like the colors that they choose and the subtlety of them and the intricacy of the designs. And actually, I was really worried about the Fishbowl. I wanted it to be really cool. I thought, could it be possible to make it cool? And like
Sony might drop.
Yeah, right. No, and I think that they did.
With playing these characters so thoroughly, I can't imagine your memories don't get altered. When you look back in your own memories from each year, do you, like your Coyote year as a Nightcrawler, like when you're playing Detective Loki, do you have memories that feel tinged in darkness versus when you're playing Oakshaw, like an anime character?
I mean, I have days that I feel like are just tinged in darkness and then days that are great joy. I mean, I don't think it depends on the character necessarily. Someone asked me once what it was like to play, I play a lot of dark characters, and I was like, I have fun doing it.
Yeah.
Which seems to be odd for people to understand. Like, oh, there are these dark subjects, how could you have fun? I'm like, it's what I love. Like, it brings me joy. Like, I come out of a scene that was sort of madness sometimes, and I'm like, oh, that was so fun. Because being an actor, like, I feel like in comics too, you need your imagination. And if you lose your imagination, you're done for.
Yeah.
And I've gone through different things where I've lost my imagination. I've gone completely into the real world of something, and it's no fun.
Right.
And ultimately, not any better, in my opinion. Which is why playing Mysterio was so cool, because it was like, so much imagination needed.
Yeah.
And there were days where Tom Holland would say to me stuff like, we'd be in the middle of a scene, and then, you know, normally in a normal movie, you'd walk out and walk through the door, and he'd be like, oh no, we can fly out of this scene.
Full that was an escape out of rooms.
That was a steep learning curve for me. I was like, well, I'll see you later. You know what I mean?
And
that was it. Yeah. It was cool.
You play such wide polarity of characters. There's so many polarities of humanity. Have you found any sort of like universal starting point for you when jumping? Is there a universal truth to humanity is what I'm asking.
Wow.
You know, light and fluffy comic book show.
No.
Okay.
No. I like, I love searching for when people are honest, when I can be honest, and I do that in my work, and I try and find that with characters. And if you look at a lot of the characters I play, that's what they're doing. They're doing a lot of searching.
Yeah.
And they're doing a lot of like calling people out on their crap. It's the journey, not the destination in that way.
That is a perfect. I was hoping for humanity being.
And hence Saga.
And here we are.
Yeah.
So Saga is, I think, the most important new comic of the last 10 years. I think Saga will be a new benchmark of what comic books can actually do with the narrative. Wow. So this is a comic that is a space opera about two rival factions of humanoid-like characters, and every page you meet a new batch of characters, and you fall in love with them so quickly that you don't know who your protagonists are and who your antagonists are because you're so invested. And by the end of each volume, you've met about 20 to 30 new characters, and you're just thoroughly in love with all of them. It's like Star Wars meets Romeo and Juliet meets Battlestar Galactica, but with the infinite budget of comics, and it really educates you about like what the core of humanity is by ways of showing you non-humans.
Wow.
So Saga's my next recommendation. Let's move on to some more.
All right, cool.
With nerddom and fandoms, there's an obsession, there's a quality to it. Is there a nerddom that's your thing?
Well, I mean, I love movies, you know. I love food. I'm pretty nerdy about food. And oddly about design, like architecture.
Did that Velvet Buzzsaw inform a lot of the zealousy
about
of
art?
that?
No, I don't think that was just. I don't know what that was. I like the way, you know, somebody would design a space and blow your mind with it. That you can see someone's mind in the world. Like you can drive down the street and you're like, that person's mind, that woman's mind. You learn so much about someone you might not ever know. You know, oh, that person's clearly bored. Oh, that person's clearly angry.
The amount of work you've done is such an array of characters. How do you feel like that culmination really helped inform Quentin Beck, since he's got 40 years of comic and then your years of existence?
When they came to me about the character, when John Watts was talking about the character, there's a tremendous amount of freedom. A lot of the characters, you're sort of trapped in certain ideas that you have to then assimilate to. With him, there's profound freedom. So there are a lot of choices that he can make. And I love that about him as a character. Because he's not as known, you know, like in a popular sense, I could do a little bit more, some different choices with him.
Yeah,
and they did, and Marvel did too. You are all part of the creative team as well as your own separate character. So you have an idea, best idea wins. And from that, we started to shape certain ideas. There was always like a foundation. Yeah, it was really inspiring. And no one is really threatened by it. And John would say, and I think it's great, he's like, it doesn't matter where it comes from. Like in the end, it is his movie. So
I'll take credit or do my thing.
Yeah, I mean, and those are the best filmmakers I've worked with say that.
speaking of comics,
Yes.
a very important one is Mr. Miracle. Mr. Miracle is a Jack Kirby character that's from the time of like wacky hijinks and super surrealistic, like cosmic energy flavor. And they made
Cosmic energy flavor.
Cosmic energy flavor.
Love it.
Kirby.
Yeah.
But they made him the most grounded character ever from the most wacky universe. So this is like a Looney Tune meets This Is Us.
I like the repeat of the panel.
Oh, it's
yeah. What does it say?
what's
Like the
Dark
darkness?
Side is.
The dark side is.
So Darkseid is the big bad of DC. He's like the overwhelming entity. So Darkseid is repeated as this ominous flavor. So it feels like a drum beat and a score,
Yeah, it's so
but it's
cool.
visual.
So cool.
So Mr. Miracle, very important. Check that out. Deadly Class is written by Rick Remender as his love letter to the 80s and his screw you letter to high school. So he was in high school in the 80s and hated it, but he daydreamed about an assassin school. This is a world that features like people trying to kill each other, but with the drama of high school. And the last book is Scarlet.
I knew they'd make one about Johansson.
There she is, just putting in the work.
I knew they'd do
Just
it.
that haircut, she's informed. So Bendis wrote The Ultimate Spider-Man. So this ties into the Spider-Man world, but it's the other side of Bendis. This is a book about basically police brutality in Portland, and her boyfriend are the victims of police brutality, and her boyfriend dies, and she is framed as being a drug dealer, and she is also a little off because of the incident, but she starts a one-woman campaign to end the blue cone of silence and bring actual credibility to the police force. And it becomes this basically, anti-cop movement, but it's grounded in reality of cops being the good guys when you're right, mixed with photorealistic art.
So cool.
So dark, gritty realism reflected through comics and reality being too close to home at times. But let's check out, let's buy some comics.
All right, cool.
How's that feeling?
It's pretty heavy.
The weight of knowledge?
Yeah. Oh.
This much history and like all of this insanity, and I actually can't believe the depth of that movie.
From an expert like you, it means a lot. Thank you. That's the best part of my job, is that I get to learn from people like you about things I didn't know.
That will be 169.24.
Okay.
Thank you.
I hope your next part involves Mr. Miracle and a Spider-Man sequel, Straczynski, and adapting Saga.
Something is going to inspire me in those books.
Here we go.
It's-
To pass off the
Thank you.
knowledge.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Thank you
Thank
so
you
much.
guys.
Thank you.
Enjoy.
That was our first international episode of Comic Book Shopping, and we had Jake Gyllenhaal here, but he mysteriously disappeared. Oh, I'm ashamed of that pun. But I would like to thank Sony. I would like to thank London. I would like to thank Orbital Comics in London. I would like to thank you for seeing Spider-Man Far From Home on July 2nd. It is amazing. I cannot wait to talk about it. And I would like, as always, to thank comic books for existing. Thanks, guys.